Okay, let's look at the joint operating agreement problems on page 95. This is of the Oil and Gas Land Reference Volume. It's the AAPL's CPL and RPL exam study guide. So we're going to look on page 95, and we have a typical working interest scenario there. And I'm just going to read it to you, and then we'll walk through the example together and calculate the interest. So we'll just start by reading it, and it says, example 1, in a simple scenario, A, B, C, and D, so here's A, B, C, and D, each own a lease covering a quarter section in section 1. They wish to join together to drill a well or wells on one or all of the leases. To accomplish this, they enter into a joint operating agreement with a contract area defined as all section 1. So on the cover page of that joint operating agreement where it says contract area, there'll be a blank, and what it will say is all of section 1. So they want to know what will be their working interest in any well drilled in section 1. And then it says to assume section 1 is a 640-acre pooled gas unit. So any well drilled in section 1, what is the interest going to be? The first one is, what is the working interest going to be? So let me just walk you through what this box they have here. A is a lessee. A took a lease from a landowner for a 1/8 royalty. B is a lessee. B took a lease from their landowner for a 3/16 royalty interest. C took a lease for a 1/4 royalty interest, and D took a lease for a 3/16 royalty interest. So now we have to answer a series of questions. We want to know what their working interest is, whether the well location determines the working interest, what is the net royalty paid in the unit, and the amount to the royalty owners under the lease, and then who pays the royalty and what is their net revenue interest in each lease. So let's begin with what is their working interest. Well, this is a 640-acre gas unit. And A owns 160 acres. B owns 160. C 160. D. So the calculation is going to be 160 divided by 640, and that's going to be 25%. That's pretty easy to understand. 25, 25, 25, 50, 75, 100%. So they each have a 25% working interest in the unit. So let's put that in here. I'm going to get a different color here. 25%, 25%, 25%, and D's interest is then 25%. So they each have a 25% interest in the joint operating agreement in the unit. So now let's look at, does the well location, notice that the well here is drilled on this C in the southwest quarter. Does that well location determine what their working interest is going to be? And the answer is no, that has no impact. So this will be no. What is the amount of the net royalty paid in the unit? So to calculate the net royalty paid in the unit, we're really just going to do an average. So we're going to average 0.125, 0.1875, 0.25, and another 0.1875, and divide it by 25%. Divide it by 4. So let's just break out the calculator, and the 1/8 here is going to be a 0.125 plus B's interest is going to be a 0.1875 plus C's interest is going to be a 0.25 plus D's interest is going to be another 0.1875. So that's a 0.75. Now all we're going to do is divide that by 4. And that's going to give us a net royalty paid in the unit of 3/16 or a 0.1875. So we'll go ahead and put a 0.1875 here. That's the net royalty. Now we have to determine the amount to the royalty owners under the lease. Now here's what the calculation is. We're going to take the royalty interest, here this 0.125 for example, and we're going to multiply it by the working interest. And that's going to give us this net revenue interest. I'm sorry, what the amount to the royalty owner under the lease is. So we're going to do 0.125 times 0.25. We're going to do 0.1875 times 0.25. We're going to do 0.25 times 0.25. And then we're going to do another 0.1875 times 0.25. Okay, so if we want to do the calculation, we're just going to do a 0.125 here. For A's interest, a 1/8 is also a 0.125. So we're going to say 0.125 times 0.25, the 25% working interest. And that's going to make A's interest this 0.03125. So let's plug in that interest. 0.03125. That's A's interest. Okay. B's interest is going to be the 3/16 times the 25% working interest. So 0.1875 times 0.25. And that's going to be 0.046875. So B's interest is going to be 0.046875. Okay, the next interest is a 1/4 royalty payment times 25% working interest. That should be pretty easy to calculate. 0.25 times 0.25. And that interest is going to be a 0.0625. So C's interest is going to be a 0.0625. Okay, and that brings us to D's interest, which is the same as B's interest. And we know B's interest is this 0.046875. That is a 3/16 royalty. Oops, sorry, 0.046875. Okay, so this is A's interest, B's, C's, and D's. Okay, so now what we have to do is find out the royalty is borne by and what is the net revenue interest of each. So what we're going to do here is we're going to do a calculation where we show what the working interest owner's net revenue interest is going to be. So let me show you. I'm going to clear this out so I can show you how this works. Because there's really two ways to get at this calculation. There's the way that the book is showing you, and then there's the way that I usually do it. Either way is correct, but I wanted to show you both ways. So what we're doing here is we are saying, okay, they have a 25% working interest. All right, A has a 25% working interest, for example. So we'll start with A. We'll do 25%. And what we're going to subtract is, we're going to multiply 25% times, and I'm going to do a parentheses, 1, meaning their 100% interest, 1 minus their royalty interest, which in this case is going to be a 0.125. And that is going to be what their net revenue interest is going to be. So the calculation is 25 times, well, let's do it this way first. First, I'm going to do 1 minus 0.125. Oops, that's not what I want. 1 minus 12.5. Okay, so 100 minus 12.5 is going to be 87.5 or 0.875. So let's go ahead and plug that in, 0.875. Okay, so now we're just going to do 25% times 0.875. .875. And that's going to be a 0.21875. So A's net revenue interest is going to be 0.21875. Okay? We can do the same thing for B, C, and D. Now, if we want to do B, we're going to do 25% times 1 minus, and this is just, we're deducting their mineral ownership royalties that are due, the burdens. So we're doing 1 minus the burdens, and in this case, the burdens are 0.1875. And if you do that calculation, that is going to equal to 0.203125. So we'll put that here. Okay, and then for C, it's going to be the same thing, 25% times 1 minus 0.25, which will be 75. And that's going to equal 0.1875. And that's going to be their net revenue interest for C. And since we know D is the same as B, that's going to be a 0.203125. Okay, that's how I do it. And the reason I do it that way is it's just easier for me to think about 1 minus the burdens. For some reason, it's easier for me to see it that way. But the way the book is telling you to do it, and it's equally as effective, is you're going to say 25%. Let's see, get a different color here. We're going to say 25% minus 1/8 times their 25% working interest. So if you do this calculation out, you'll see that it comes up with the same number. So it's 0.25 minus 0.125 times 0.25 equal, oh, it didn't come out, hang on, shoot. Let's break it out. Let's say 0.125 times 0.25. So that's going to be 0.03125. Okay, let's plug that in. 0.03125. And now we're going to say 25% minus that 0.03125. Oops, hang on. And that's going to give you that same number, that 0.21875. So you see they're just coming at it a different way, but the answer turns out to be the same. So what they're saying is they're 25% working interest minus 1/8 times the burdens. I'm sorry, 1/8 times the working interest. So it comes up to the same thing, but I just wanted to show you how they did it. So the same thing for the 3/16, we're going to go 25% the working interest minus total ownership, or by the by the royalty interest times the total working interest for that particular owner. And so that's going to come out to, let's do 0.1875 first, times 0.25. And that's going to give you 0.046875. So we'll plug that in, 0.046875. And now we're going to subtract that from 25% for the AAPL calculation. So we're going to go 0.25 minus 0.046875. And that's going to be this 0.203125. Okay, and we could do this for the rest of them, but I think you get the gist of it now. That there's two different ways to do it. You can either go 25% times 100% minus the 0.125, or the AAPL method, 25% minus 1/8 times 25%. Either way, you're going to get the same answer, but I just wanted to show you the two different ways to get it. Okay, now let's go on to example 2.